Wide receivers 1 250, ranked and tiered for your viewing pleasure. Let's go. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, and Emeka Egbuka. Let's start with our wide receiver 1 on the week, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Been absolutely balling all year, Tom. Absolutely nuclear, week in, week out. Any concerns at all with Rashid Shaheed being added, potentially taking some targets away from him?
No, I mean, according to Dan Gratiano of ESPN today, he mentioned that the Rashid Shaheed trade was more about Cooper Kupp being the age he is, being injury prone in the way he is at this point in his career, and also a little concern that Torrey Horton is a bit of a slight wide receiver and somebody who got banged up quite a bit in college. This isn't about JSN. JSN has been over 95 receiving yards in all but one game this year, been over 100 in all but 2 games. Like, what JSN is doing, yes, we should expect to see some level of regression, but only because what he's doing right now is just truly absurd. Going up against the Cardinals, they've been pretty good against wide receiver position. They've allowed the 19th most fantasy points to the position. They ranked 16th against the pass in defense, but JSN's just on another planet right now.
Someone else who is on another planet, Amon-Ra St. Brown, gets a very juicy matchup against the Commanders this week. Tom, absolute smash spot for him?
Yeah, on any number of levels, the Lions are favored by 9 points. I'm just going to reel these off. The biggest red zone target share leader in the league is Amon-Ra St. Brown at 45%. He's seen 14 targets. The Commanders, they allow the highest yards per attempt on first read targets. We know that Amon-Ra is quite frequently first read. They also allow a league-high 77% completion rate to slot targets. They allow the highest yards per attempt to slot targets. Everything just stacks up as a real nuclear spot for him.
Absolutely. Someone else who has been going slightly nuclear since the Tyreek Hill injury, Jalen Waddle. We've seen 23, 15.8, 2.5, 20.9, and 14.2 points in his last 5 weeks. Is this another smash spot for Jalen Waddle this week?
I think so, yeah, because like you mentioned it, the points have been ridiculous. The Dolphins frequently playing from behind. They're playing for their futures, playing for their jobs. We saw this week they traded away part of their defense in Jalen Phillips. So that's not exactly going to help things. The Bills are favored by 10 points on the road in Miami. And whilst Buffalo are a much easier team to run on than pass on, Miami are going to have to lean into that. And the target shares, the volume that Jalen Waddle's seeing, and how Jalen Waddle's been playing as well, give me enough confidence to call him, elite in this tier.
And rounding out the tier, we've got Emeka Egbuka, who's going up against a pretty impressive Patriots defense. Any concerns Christian Gonzalez could play about what that could do for the incredible rookie?
Yeah, slightly, but I think like you move Emeka Egbuka around things enough that we should be okay. I mean, he had a 37% target share in his last game before the bye, and that was when he wasn't even healthy. So I think one way or another, he'll see enough volume that he should be okay.
Moving into the A tier, we do have Zay Flowers, Lab McConkey, Nico Collins, Roma Odunze, and AJ Brown. Tom, 23.4, 33.1, 19.9, and 24.4. Those are the last 4 performances for Nico Collins against the Jaguars defense. But no CJ Stroud this week. Can we still be confident that Nico Collins is going to continue that trend of absolutely dominating the Jags?
No, and also like the Jags defense is just a different beast these days. Like they've been really good against the pass. Now, they've been steadily improving as a whole unit, and I just don't think that they're one where I would have confidence about a backup quarterback in Davis Mills being particularly great. Like it's hard to fade an elite talent like Nico Collins beyond this tier, but like this is where we're at. Like this is where the start of the headaches begin.
And also in this tier, our wide receiver 12 this week, we have Roma Odunze. Last week, Roma Odunze saw the same volume as targets as the quarterback. Also the same as Cole Kmet, who left the game injured in the second quarter. do we think this is a squeaky wheel game and he's going to get back and smash? Or do you have some nervousness that this offense is going to be run heavy and maybe not enough volume for Odunze to put up the numbers he did at the start of the year?
So the Bears are at home to the Giants. They're favored by 3.5 points, 48-point over-under. So this game is going to be plenty of points, two bad defenses. The Giants have allowed the 10th most fantasy points for the wide receiver position. They're very much banged up in the secondary, much like the Bears are. I think this is a get-right spot. I think, like you look and you've got Rome Odunze's dad on social media talking about how terrible the team are treating his son. You've got the team tweeting out blocking highlights from Rome Odunze. Like, I'm sure that this is going to bounce back. JJ Zachariason made this point the other day that Odunze finished with a 9% target share. His previous season low in target share was 17% this year. And what people need to realize that as much as the Bengals are trash, we've actually got a couple of decent players back there when it comes to their quarterback position.
Absolutely. Before we move into the B tier, though, if you are finding this for the first time, hit that subscribe button. We do these ranking shows every single week and get your lineups nailed for the weekend. In the B tier, we do have Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison. Tom, Deebo Samuel, but with Marcus Mariota on the center, you comfortable, you confident, or are you a little bit nervous?
I'm a little bit nervous, definitely, but look, this is going to be most likely a pass-heavy script because they'll be playing from behind against the Lions. And in games where Terry McLaurin's played this year, Deebo's had a 23% target share, but in the games without McLaurin, who's been ruled out already, that jumps to 31%. Like, it's kind of hard to get away from that volume. Deebo has looked pretty good this year. Yes, he hasn't looked insanely good, but he's looked good enough that I think, you kind of say it should be okay. I mean, there's been weeks where he's definitely looked better than other weeks, but like he continues to see the ball at a high rate. He continues to see design plays for him, and I'm comfortable enough with it.
One player that we hugely disagree on this week, Chris Olave. I've got him as my wide receiver 11. You've got him as your wide receiver 26. I'm leaning towards just insane volume going his way after the Rashid Shaheed trade. Tom, why are you so low on Chris Olave this week?
I mean, when you say it like that, it does sound a tad low. With no Rashid Shaheed, maybe that does come up a few spots, but I'm not sure that I would bump him out of this tier. That definitely feels like a touch aggressive for me going up against Panthers defense, who have been reasonable, I would say. Like, they haven't given up lots of fantasy points. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And I just don't think that Tyler Shook on the road for a second game in a row is something that I really want to buy into yet.
One other player I want to touch on, Marvin Harrison Jr. We obviously saw put up a really nice performance, both in terms of volume, stats, but also on the film with Jacoby Brissett under center. Do you think he can build off that 22.6 point performance last week and hopefully continue to grow now Jacoby Brissett is actually able to spread the ball around?
Well, this one's going to be a tough matchup going up against the Seahawks on the road, divisional matchup. Like, that is not an easy one. And so much of what Jacoby Brissett did last week was in play action. Seattle are excellent against play action, so they will have the work cut out for them. But it's just so refreshing to see this guy who we all knew to be uber talented at this point, a year and a half into his career, finally, for the first time ever, see 3 targets on the first drive of the game. It is absolutely maddening that Kyler could never even get to that level. It's crazy that 7 targets is a career high for him. But yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable enough starting Marvin Harrison as my wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 at this point, moving forward until we see otherwise.
And in the C tier, we do have Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Romeo Doubs, Jordan Addison, Tatoria McMillan, Garrett Wilson, Quinton Johnson, Wan'Dale Robinson, Keenan Allen, and Brian Thomas Jr. Tom, no Kayshon Boutte is looking like this week. Do you think we could see an increase in snap share and potentially production from Stephon Diggs?
I do think so, yeah. I mean, Kayshon Boutte, if he's out, like I know Mike Vrabel talked about the fact that maybe Kyle Williams needs to step up. and health in that aspect of like stretching the field. But like Kyle Williams has had so little involvement this year. Stephon Diggs is somebody who I feel like, we should be able to trust to a better level. Over the last, since week 4, he's had 4 games over 20% target share. 3 of those have been over a 29% target share. So it's not always turned into incredible fantasy days, but it's just kind of fine. It's reasonable. It's steady. And I'm okay with that. Going up against the Falcons last week obviously wasn't an incredible matchup for them. Going up against the Bucs this week is definitely an easier matchup. They allow the 14th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And whilst the Bucs are excellent against the run, you can get them from through the air a little more.
One other player that I wonder that we kind of sleep on week in, week out, Romeo Doubs. He's the wide receiver 28 right now, averaging 13 points a game, and that's with him having already had his bye week. He has been over 8 fantasy points for each of the last 5 games, including a 29.8, a 16.1, a 13.2. No Tucker Kraft. It's already been that Romeo Doubs has been the only reliable receiver in this Green Bay Packers wide receiver room. No Tucker Kraft now. Do you think he could see even more volume? And are we both too low on him?
Well, the matchup isn't great going up against the Eagles. The Eagles' pass defense is still a pretty decent unit, even if it's not as good as it was last year. They rank 18th in EPA allowed, but they just haven't given up many big fantasy days to wide receivers. They've given up the 7th fewest fantasy points so far. When you get these kind of players like Romeo Doubs, who's definitely trusted with end zone targets as well, I think that's what's going to really matter when you've removed Tucker Kraft from the equation. Romeo Doubs averaging a 26% target share. And then you look around the team, who are the red zone options? You got Christian Watson, who's in and out of games. You've got Matthew Golden in and out of games. You've got Dontavian Wicks, who, when he's out there, drops the ball. Luke Musgrave has 1 touchdown through 24 career regular seasons. So, I just think that the way this game probably goes is through a lot of Josh Jacobs. But if I had to choose a pass catcher, it would be Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, and then Totoro McMillan has been solid, reliable, not quite had that huge blow-up week this week. Gets a really nice matchup. Do you think this could be the coming out party for the impressive young rookie?
Yeah, the Saints, the second biggest pass funnel in the league. They rank 12th best versus the run, but 26th against the pass. They've allowed the 3rd highest completion rate on play action. They're also a team who like to keep the pace up. So it should play into giving the Panthers an opportunity to try and establish a little bit more through the air, which so far they've been poor at. Their pass offense ranks 26th, so it's not like they've been good at it. But the volume that Tetsy's, he's had 52% of the team receiving yards over the last 2 weeks, 36% target share over the last 2 weeks, 42% first read target share over the last 2 weeks. Those are ridiculous numbers. He just needs a little to break his way.
Yeah, and then 2 players that I do want to touch on slightly, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen. We touched in the quarterbacks video about how the offensive line injuries could adjust how Justin Herbert needs to play. Does that make you nervous about Quentin Johnston and also Keenan Allen, who last week only played 36.9% of the offensive snaps?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a headache, this offense, for that sort of stuff. And even though Keenan Allen did that, he's still tied with QJ and Gadsden with a 17% target share, only behind Lad McConkey by a couple of percentage. So it's not, when he was out there, he was still getting targeted, which does make up for it a little bit. The Steelers this week come into LA, and the Steelers defense is pretty woeful. We've seen a lot of surprising kind of shootouts with that team as well, because the offense is playing well enough to carry. They've allowed the 2nd most adjusted fantasy points to the position. They rank 19th in pass defense EPA. So I'm having minor headaches trying to decide how to play this wide receiver room week to week. One thing I would say is that the Steelers have allowed the 3rd highest QB rating on 20-plus yard downfield passes. So maybe that sets up better for QJ. But Keenan Allen, we tend to see him popping up in the end zone, scoring touchdowns, so I don't want to push him too far down the rankings at the same time.
Yeah, and then the final player we've got here, Brian Thomas Jr., obviously had the injury from last week. We've also seen the addition of Jacob Myers into this wide receiver room. I think this is the lowest we've had him ranked this year, but I've got him ranked even lower. You're the one that's buoying him up quite a bit. So why are you still confident in Brian Thomas this week?
I'm not necessarily confident. I think it sets up well enough that you'd like to think if he was out there and if he was healthy, which I'm not necessarily saying is going to happen, then he could be in for a good game because Travis Hunter's been taken out of the picture. And you'd like to think that sooner or later things are going to swing his way. But there's part of me that thinks he's going to miss this game. And maybe that's why they were aggressive looking for Jacoby Myers. The Texans, I mean, yeah, they've allowed fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Like Derek Stingley's not playing as good as he was last year, but he's still playing very well. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll get more information as we get it. I feel like if I pushed Brian Thomas down any further, I'd have to hear a report to give me reason to, because there's still so much talent there. It just hasn't worked out, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. Before we dive into our D tier, though, if you are agonizing over those start sit questions, don't stress yourself out anymore. Get them in the comments below. Tom and I will give you our thoughts, our opinion, and make sure you nail that start sit decision. In the D tier, we've got Jauan Jennings, Khalil Shakir, Jameson Williams, Alec Pierce, Christian Watson, and Troy Franklin. Tom, Jauan Jennings seems to be winning out as the wide receiver and skill player outside of Christian McCaffrey to own in San Francisco. Yet we've still gone all the way down in our D tier. Could he have a big matchup this week?
Yeah, it's just really difficult kind of judge what's going on with the 49ers every week, isn't it? Like every week we're told, oh, Ricky Pearsall may be out there, Brock Purdy might be out there, and then eventually we just end up with Jauan Jennings being out there and Mac Jones throwing the ball and Christian McCaffrey, and even George Kittle hasn't looked particularly great. Now, Jauan Jennings, as you say, has kind of looked like that wide receiver one with target shares of 30%, 22 and 21% over the last 3 games. But it hasn't really turned into anything particularly great. Like he said, over those 3 games, 7 points, 8 points, 14 points, which is why he finds himself down here. Now, this matchup is a reasonably good matchup. The Rams, despite being a very good pass defense, they've given up the 11th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. I just don't know how the points are ever going to shake out for this 49ers team at the minute. Is Kendrick Bourne going to pop up and have a massive day? He's kind of faded away a little bit lately. And Jennings, because those points aren't really materializing, I just seem to find a way to just nudge people ahead of him a lot of the time.
Yeah, one person that I seem to be doing the opposite and keep consistently nudging him further and further up is Alec Pierce. He had a phenomenal performance last week, putting up 17.5 fantasy points. He saw really nice target share, 12 targets, 24% targets per route run. Obviously, the big trade in the week, Adonai Mitchell has gone. Do you think that Alec Pierce is a player that we can now trust as that kind of wide receiver 3 flex play week in, week out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alec Pierce, you talked about him in your Dynasty Buys and Sells video. I talked about him in the waivers video. You could see it coming last week, and one of the key things for him last week was going up against single high defense. He's just absolutely roasted them all year, and he continues to get really good target volume. But like the Falcons, they also are a big single high defense. Debro over at Fantasy Pros has been making this point all week. Against single high this year, Alec Pierce has a 27% target share, 3.6 yards per route run, and a 32% first read share. They're using him in different ways. He's not just a pure deep burner. He's averaging 7.8 targets per game over the past month. He's averaging 0.23 targets per route run over that, which ranks 25th amongst wide receivers. And he's doing all this with an average depth of target of 20 yards. That's the 4th highest in the league. And it's just insane what he's doing. He's giving great fantasy returns. He's averaging 71 yards per game. Like, Alec Pierce is breaking out. And if the touchdowns start coming, which they haven't done so far, then it really will be one of those things where people are forced to sit up and take notice.
The guy's going to get paid this offseason. Someone who was recently paid, though, Christian Watson, the Packers stayed committed, reinvested in him before the season started, and he's starting to earn a significant role. 75% of routes last week. Okay, the fantasy production wasn't incredible, 7.8 points, but we know Tucker Craft. The Packers are going to be looking for another reliable option. Could that be Watson?
I just struggle a little bit with this game environment against the Eagles at home. Like, we've had 4 targets a game in each of them, and I think he's caught 7 of them. It's been nice without Tucker Craft. Definitely somebody needs to step up, and Matt LaFleur said that coming off the back of last week that somebody needed to step up. But the Eagles have allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. They haven't given up a lot deep downfield, and I don't think that this profiles like a game where he's suddenly going to turn into a high volume play.
No, it makes a lot of sense. We'll move into our E tier while we're there. Tej Johnson, Josh Downs, Darius Slayton, Parker Washington, Trey Tucker, and Torrey Horton. Tom, Parker Washington had a really nice game last week, but it looks like Jakobi Meyers has been brought in. The talk is this week that Parker Washington's still going to be the main slot receiver with Jakobi Meyers playing the X and the flanker role. Do you think that Parker Washington could be a sort of PPR scam for at least one more week?
Yeah, and you look at this matchup against the Texans. When we go up against the Texans, what do we not want to do? We don't want to necessarily play the outside wide receivers because you're going to end up taking on the cornerbacks there who are much stronger. In the slot, it tends to be a little bit easier. And Parker Washington has been the primary slot receiver for the last 2 weeks. He's had 19 targets over the last 2 games, 8 for 90 last week. And he's kind of in that role that reminds me, and even the way he looks out on the field, it reminds me a little bit of Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk was a PPR scam with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was always happy to take that check down, always happy to take those routes across the middle of the field. That's what Brian Thomas absolutely doesn't want right now. When Brian Thomas is playing and running across the middle of the field, they don't even bother targeting him because he's just so shy from them. But 50 yards in both the last 2 games, Parker Washington. I'm okay starting him at a push.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else that we differ quite a bit on this week, Torrey Horton. I'm lower on Rashid Shaheed this week because I think it could take him a week or 2 to get back up to speed after the trade. And that means that I'm probably a little bit higher than you on Torrey Horton. Tom, where do you sit on Shaheed versus Horton this week?
Yeah, so I'm firmly on the Shaheed side. I mean, well, I've got him at wide receiver 38. You've got him at wide receiver 68, which is obviously quite a bit of a gulf. And then I've got Torrey Horton at wide receiver 43, and you've got him at wide receiver 40. So it's not like I'm massively low on him. I think that they can all go out there and have a good game against this Arizona defense. It's more that I have confidence in Rashid Shaheed picking back up where he left in a Clint Kubiak offense, but last year he looked better than Chris Olave before he got injured, so I'm okay with that one. Maybe Shaheed and Horton are a little too close together and one of them needs to drop, but I don't have any concerns about Shaheed. Horton, it's been spectacular, last week, the 2 touchdowns, caught all 4 of his targets, but it's still not exactly high volume and it still feels a little bit not fluky but not reliable.
And this is one of the offenses that leans into that 12 personnel and 21 personnel more than average. Yeah. So it's not like we're going to see all 3 of them out on the field at all times. I do feel like it needs to be probably 2 of the 3 rather than 3 of the 3 getting home for fantasy purposes. In our F tier, we do have Olamide Zaccheaus, Demario Douglas, Malik Washington, Keon Coleman, Kendrick Bourne, Calvin Austin, Rashad Bateman, and Jakobi Meyers. Tom, Demario Douglas was absolutely phenomenal last week. Saw 46.15% targets per route run, posted 20 fantasy points. Yet we've got him in our F tier. What's going on?
Yeah, well, the New England offense week to week just tends to change so much, doesn't it? So it's not one of those where you can feel confident that Demario Douglas is going to have a big week. We had a nice run of Kayshon Boutte having a good time, but then all of a sudden you go, and obviously Boutte left the game last week, but even before then, it seemed to have turned into this game. Now, Pop Douglas was playing out of the backfield at times last week in probably linked to the fact that Ramondre wasn't out there. So they were being creative. They were definitely scheming things to him. But I'm not sure that I'm fully believing that it's going to be like that every week. I'm not sure that I believe that it's going to be even like that again this week. Now, the Bucks defense, you can get at them. Like, these are not like an elite unit by any means, but they've not been a team that's given up huge amounts to the slot either. They've given up 59 receptions there this year, which ranks kind of middle of the table when you look kind of like through yards per route run, everything like that. They don't stand out as a great matchup, and I just feel like this is going to be Stephon Diggs and Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I mean, Demario Douglas' fantasy points this year, 8.2, 1.8, 2.7, 0, 3.7, 16.1, 4.7, 5.7, 20. Like, he's had 2 usable weeks and 7 absolute duds. Like, yeah, okay. I hope if you've got him on a team, it's investable, because I don't want to try and predict the games when he's going to go off and see significant volume. And like you said, I'm not convinced it's going to be this week either. Let's just touch briefly on Jakobi Meyers before we head on out of here, Tom. Obviously traded to Jacksonville midweek. You've been suggesting and mentioned a couple of times that the wide receiver coach in Jacksonville, he worked with Jakobi Meyers previously. Do you think that could help get him up to speed quick and have a fantasy relevant week this week?
I think it means that when he is out there, that it's going to be on routes which he's comfortable with and schemes that he knows. I wouldn't expect a high snap share. I wouldn't expect a massive target share. But the reason they brought Jakobi Meyers in is because he doesn't tend to drop the ball very often. And the Jags, the receivers they've got, have been dropping the ball. So in high pressure situations, would it surprise me to see stuff schemed to him, to see him be the first read and stuff? It wouldn't, no. But going up against the Texans defense, this game's got a 38-point over-under. That kind of speaks volume to me. I mean, the Texans, they have been brilliant against so much this year when it comes to the pass. But I think he'll be okay, but I don't want to get too excited about it.
Yeah, personally, I kind of want to see it before I'm having to start him if it's any sort of managed leagues. But that is it. Wide receivers 1 to 50, tiered and ranked for your pleasure. Make sure on your way out, you're hitting that thumbs up, hitting that subscribe button, and of course, check out our other videos we've released this week.